Okay, I want to end. I thought it was very funny that the module where we're doing such deep, quiet work happens to be the module where I was finally able to source thick needles that I like. And I want to have a needle conversation because there's just, it's been floating here for now a couple of days, and now the room's aware of the big needles over there, and most of the big jokes have already been made. And then a lot of people have already stuck them in and realized that it's not a big deal. There's something to understand about needles, is that if we go back 1,000 years to the Tang, we'll say, forget the Han, forget the Three Kingdoms when Hua Tuo was running around, whatever he had, whatever generation we go back to that time, the imperial people, they had access to craftsmen and the money to make it happen, that they could have unbelievably hair-thin needles, right? And so there are records and stories of these hair-thin needles, but there might have been like 3 in the kingdom. And everybody else, you started with a piece of metal, you melted it, you poured it into as small of mold as possible, and then you took it out and you filed it down to the shape you wanted, right? And so needles were pretty darn thick. And it's important to understand this, that it's not, oh, well, it was barbarian, because if that's barbarian, then we have to assume where we are with the medicine today is a vast improvement from our medical ancestors, right? Barbarians with thick stake acupuncturists. Today, we have silicone-coated easy slip-in needles. We have improved. I don't feel that way. I do not feel our skill is anywhere near what it was to the people who were there. I could be kidding myself. There's people in China who argue that we just have this fantasy that the ancients were much more superior, and we just idolize them even though it's not true. I can tell you that nobody today in acupuncture is writing about treating serious illnesses, and everybody back then was. So right there, for me, that indicates that they're seeing a whole other level of people. And honestly, no one's going to write a book if everybody just kept dying, right? It's like, and then I stuck the needle in and they died. That doesn't work, right? The chapter doesn't write. So if we expect to be able to get the effects that they had, we should expect a few things. Number one, we should expect we have tangible skill. We have that now, right? Secondly, we should expect it'll be easier if we use needles like they do. And that's a thicker needle. When I first began to learn, everything is reusables. There were no disposables, and the needle was barely bendable. I have no idea. In those days, maybe there was a gauge on it. I was handed a pack of needles, and those were my needles, and I carried them on my little belt pouch, and that was that. And then we began to do a lot of teaching. We were introduced by Westerners to disposable needles. Of course, makes great sense, starts using them, was able to get these 0.53s, and that was my standard favorite needle for a long time. And then they disappeared. That company stopped making them, and I ended up with the 0.35s that I've been using for 10 years. I'd have to do the math exactly, but a long time. It's the needles you've seen me all use. I go to the West, everyone's like, oh, that's such a thick needle. And then I say, well, actually, I used to use a 0.53. And then I get they study in China, they're such barbarians. It's like the Chinese needles, it hurts, and they stick it in. And, you guys have been with me long enough that I hope you've realized that this medicine should be everything, right? It should go from feeling like having a nail staked into you to almost no sensation at all, to being able to create a yuan state deep in someone, to be able to engage someone and have them fully awake. And it's the spectrum that makes this beautiful. It shouldn't be Japanese is this, Chinese is that, something else is something else. That's not. Ideally, you are able to do all of it. And a lot of interest has come back, and the silliest thing is these needles have come back and are able to be purchased again in sizes I never was able to get before. I was a 0.53, and now you can get 0.5, 0.6, 0.7, 0.8, 1.0. Right? Now I start to act like you guys. Like 1.0, what am I going to do with that, right? If I just start working with them, I'll realize that it's not a big deal. I'm trying to tell you about everything else. They're there because of physical therapists doing trigger pressure work. There's suddenly a demand for physical therapists doing muscle release. You need a bigger needle if you're dealing with big muscles. And therefore, these Chinese acupuncture needles are not being sold to acupuncturists. They're being sold to physical therapists doing trigger point theory. So, those needles are courtesy of an entire other profession. There are needles. Those are the needles that people have been using for a long time. Have you ever looked down at your patients and just look how many needles you have in? Look at the classic prescriptions in Deadman. 3, 2, 4 needles. Can you get that with today's needle? Even with the Qi we now have, could you reliably say, I'm just going to put in 3 needles and expect a shift to happen dramatically through the body that changes their throat or changes something else? Not with today's needles. Even if we put them in and we ride them and we get the Qi, when we leave them alone and we want to leave them and retain them, they might stay awake for a minute, 3 minutes, 5 minutes. Unless we hit something like an artery and it's pumping on it, and then they just don't like it either. But just an awake needle, how long? How awake? How effectively awake? The bigger your needle, the longer the sensation lasts for. And one of the nice things is, as long as at least at the 0.5 area where I'm very comfortable, that's my needle that I began with, really. It's easier to insert. The patient feels sensation of like, oh, but there's no pain. It's not like it hurts more. In fact, I think it hurts less unless maybe you're using a sarin, which just slips right in with no sensation at all. We have very petite people today who had these big needles in. And so it's just a needle. And the biggest thing is that it allows more manipulation, because the reality is the thicker the needle, the more surface you have, the more friction there is, therefore the easier it is to do a Qi and do something with it. You'll notice I'll come around, whatever needles you're using, I will always try to use the needle you've inserted first. I look at the location, I see it's not great. But I try it anyways. I see the needle's a flimsy one, I'm going to try it because that's what you were working on, and it does no good for me to say, oh, bad location, and here it is, and there you go. So I'll try. And I get it. If I don't get it, what do? I say I make a joke about my magic needles, I pull out one of my needles, I locate it, and I use my needle because I'm used to that. It's easier. But any needle can do anything, it's just harder. And then there's a certain line where when you're treating certain things without the bigger needle, it's just really hard. Ghost points to stop mania. It's not going to be that easy with a little needle that's like that. Someone who's having what they call those cholera-like cramps. When we did the Mata Yang seminar, we talk about how it treats the cramps. And those cramps, the beriberi cramps, those will have people fly, scream, and yell as if they were dying. And you're going to put a needle in there to soften it, right, to release it. If it's a small needle, the needle's not going to enter, or it's going to go in and the muscle cramps, and it's going to bend that needle or break that needle. I had a class, a training class, where one of the things they said is that if the needle breaks inside the patient, you get a magnet and you're supposed to try and figure out how to... It's like, have you seen what I've seen when a muscle leg cramps and what you think like a magnet's going to pull it out magically somehow? I mean, who wrote that? I mean, you just... So, with that all said, James, if you could be kind enough to come up. Well, yeah. So we had one person at the break who just put a 0.8 in his own leg just to find out, right? But really, it's just 0.5 thickness. It's just a needle. That's all it is. I mean, for our Western medical doctors in this room, I mean, what a silly conversation we're having. I mean, look at the hypodermics. It's hollow, right? A kid comes in and needs a flu shot. Are you like, well, I don't know, right? No, you just give him the shot, right? You might get bit in the process by the child, but... So, I mean, that's it. That's it. How was that? I mean, and then what's nice is, once I go, I can ride in slowly, and I have a nice, solid sensation. Now, when I do Burning Mountain or Cooling Sky, when I lean, I have something I can lean into. Now, I am not saying all of you should switch to thicker needles. I don't care what you use, right? I think there's room for absolutely everyone and everything. I just don't want you thinking that it's something that's, only in China, or only this, or only that, or only this, whatever. It's just a needle, and it's one more tool. And I've said it before, I don't know if it was here, but the Chinese patient who is 40 years and younger is much more scared and skittish and chi on the surface than any Westerner. Whatever happened to the stoic countryside person, they're still there if you go to the countryside and they're over 40. But anybody who's younger, you take even a stare and they're like, oh, oh, oh. I haven't even put the needle in yet. So, I mean, the whole nonsense about like the Chinese, well, their pain tolerance is high. I mean, where is this coming from? Have they ever met a fisherman from the coasts of here, Ireland or England or Norway? I mean, what would you have to put into one of those people for them to give you even a look? Yeah. Oh. I'm a mosquito, yeah? It's another pet peeve of mine. Well, people's constitutions have changed, the Han Dynasty, the people were very, and today people, they don't have the same chi or blah, blah, blah. Have they met the people who work outdoors all winter? Have they ever met a real American cowboy? You know how cold Montana is in September? Forget December, January. I mean, September, it's already snowing and you're out there and they're just in barely, in any case, just.
Have they ever met an All Black?
Exactly. Can you imagine that? I would like to meet those people who make those claims, and then I'd like to have them treat rugby players. I mean, really? Do you think that, like, there I am in the Han Dynasty, and I've got the princess, and I'm going to live? No. I mean, I've been manipulating it up, down, up, down. I've been purposely missing chi. I've not been trying to do anything to James to make it obnoxious or strong or do anything except for just being there. I'm talking to you, and I'm putting a needle up and down in somebody, and he's not going like, oh my God, it's so big. It's just a needle. What I did yesterday or the day before with two people is I came by and I just slipped one of these into stomach 36. And then I said, okay, just try it over here. I think I located it better, and so I had them work the chi with this one. Neither of the people knew what they had here. And the only thing I said is, when you're ready to pull it out, call me over. Don't pull it out until I'm back, right? So the two of them were having a conversation about sensation, redirecting the needle, bringing it up, going into the muscle, or going into whatever they were doing I forgot to come back, and so, it was like 20 minutes or something like that. At least 20 minutes of solid people working on. He's still got the sensation, right? So they're going back and forth, 20 minutes. Neither one of them has had any fear about what's going on, nor is the person at the table going, oh my goodness, this is so much. They were just curious what was going on. And then I came back and I said, okay. I said, here's the needle, right? So much of what happens is what we put into it and not what's really there. And if we can just remember that our job is becoming enlightened, understanding Lao Tzu, practicing, looking at real illness and real people, is we're not one of the people who's affected by non-reality.